pleasure of the company of Mrs. Frances Gottesman visiting with us. Frances Gottesman is my grandmother visiting from New York by way of San Diego. And while she's been staying with us, she's consented to answer a few questions about her interesting. It is my pleasure to introduce Frances Gottesman. For our purposes and to maintain due respect, because that's only the second time I can ever remember calling you Frances, I'm going to refer to you as Baba during this, okay?
I like that very much.
Okay. Could you actually tell me literally what Baba means, by the way?
Baba is an endearment. It really is a Slavic word. But the Eastern Jewish people have accepted that instead of calling expression as Baba.
Always directed at a grandmother?
Always directed to the grandmother.
Okay. Baba, can you tell me where you were born?
I was born in Austria. I was 14 months old. I was still nursing. I was still a nursing baby when we landed here in Castle Garden, what is known today as Ellis Island. Castle Garden is the place where Jenny Lind sang. You heard of Jenny Lind?
Yes, I did.
But she was a marvelous singer at the time.
Do you remember her, by the way?
No, I never heard of her.
Okay. Well, before you came
I learned of her, about her.
Before you came to Castle Garden, can you back up and tell me your birth date, and if you remember the time?
I was born June 21st, 1895. And today I'm happy to say that I'm reaching my 92nd birthday. God willing, of the border between Romania and Austria. It's a very well-known city and a city of culture. And when, I suppose, after the Second War, it became Poland.
Were you born at home?
Poland has annexed it to Poland.
Were you born at home or in a hospital?
A home, there were no hospitals then. And the funny thing with the midwife who delivered my grandfather, my mother's father, he delivered my mother, and he delivered me. She did. She did.
Do you know her name?
I don't recall her name, but she was the one. Oh yes, Irena, Irene, Irena. I remember Mother used to say how proud she was that the same midwife took care of the 3 generations.
What was your full maiden name given to you?
Julia. They cut off the R. It was Julia. Hager. Hager, if you remember in your Bible studies, Hagar was the concubine of Abraham. She had Ishmael.
You think that's what the origin of your
And my
family
grandfather came to Amsterdam after, it seems, way back after the Inquisition period, and he was in Amsterdam when they took the census then to find out how many Jewish people were in Amsterdam. So they asked him in German, "Was ist Ihr Name? What is your name?" He said, "Hager Anochi. I am a stranger here." That's how he got the name Hager.
You mentioned that you were named after Raphael. Was Raphael a family member that you were being named
It was
after?
somebody who was very important to the family, and I don't remember the relationship, but I always used to wonder, why was I given a name after a man? Why wasn't I given a name after another woman? At least I would have had a woman's name to contend with.
What did your family call you? Your family call you Frances or Fulia?
Fulia.
Fulia.
And then later on it was Frances.
What What did your mother call you when you were over here in the States growing up?
Oh, as I grew up, it was Francis, always Francis. I was the only Francis throughout the family.
How old were you when you came to the United States?
14 months. And we came in 1896.
Do you remember the name of
September.
the boat, or do you remember being told the name of the boat that you came on?
No. I do know that my mother traveled in steerage, and I was such a good-looking baby that there were some people from second class who came down and took me up to the second class and would feed me, because mother was sick down in the steerage.
Was your father already over here?
My father and mother were together. My father in his early days had the qualities to be a rabbi, but he didn't want to follow the rabbinical order. So he tried being a merchant, but he couldn't be a merchant. He was, some of the townspeople who knew him exacted of him that he must keep to his knowledge. So he didn't want to become a mole because he couldn't stand blood. So he became a shoker of chickens. And that, he was very, very good at that. And he was a cantor during the high holy days. And most of all, he was a very important figure in the Jewish community. He was always ready to help the person, the new immigrant who came to find some sort of livelihood. And I recall I was quite young when all these people would come to our home, and my father would console them and make them feel that all is not lost. They'll find a niche in this country. And so it happened. And my father was only 59 when he died. He died of an impactment. At that time, they did not know any operation. And he was asthmatic.
What was your father's name?
Borrow. And he was known as Borrow Baker.
And your mother's maiden name?
Sarah.
And what was her maiden name?
Buck. Simcha Buck. Simon Buck. Sarah Simon Buck. My grandfather was Aaron Simon Buck.
When they came over here, did they join? Or did your parents join?
My parents came direct to my grandparents' home. They lived then on the east side. My grandfather was into the wholesale business of lemons and oranges that he used to import from Italy and from Valencia. Thank you, dear. Will you stop for a minute?
Sure. You can take a drink on camera.
We want to know what you look like when you drink.
You should know. Anything else?
You were talking about when you first came over here. What's your earliest recollection in this country, your first memory?
I don't know, but there are times that I fight with my own thoughts. I seem to remember. I don't know whether I want to implant these thoughts into my mind or it really was so. But I remember that my grandfather came to Castle Garden, and as soon as I saw him, I ran into his arms. And he used to tell of it, how I ran into his arms. But it seems impossible. At 14 months, I should remember that. But I must have been a genius then, and evaporated and became a nun. And then what else can I tell you? My early days, I was so short that every time I was taken to school to be registered, they'd say, too little, too little. So When I was 7 years old, my father carried me into the schoolroom, and I was put into the first class.
Where'd you go to school?
On Ludlow Street, on the east side. I remember the school. 24.
PS 24.
Yes, 24.
Did you have any pets when you were growing up?
No, we couldn't afford pets. No. We lived in a tenement house at that time. It was, people were very poor. It was difficult to feed a family, so you couldn't afford pets.
How many were there in your family?
We were 5, 3 brothers and 1 sister and I.
What were their names?
Max was my oldest brother, who later became a lawyer and pharmacist. My brother Harry was in the school system. My brother Sam was in the electrical work. My sister Rose was married and raised a family.
What was her
And
marriage?
I was, my brother Max was the oldest. I was next. Then was Harry and Sam, and Rose was the baby.
Who were you the closest with of all your siblings?
I was close with my brothers, but most of all with my sister, whom I cherished. The idea that I had a sister. She's 9 years younger than I am, but I thought it was so wonderful to have a sister.
Does she still live in the same
She's
town as you?
living, no, she lives in North Hollywood, and she has 4 children.
What are their
I
names?
think you know Debbie and Buddy, her son, and Miriam Pearl, and Yetta, who was the one who had the cerebral palsy. But that's her, my brother-in-law husband passed away when they celebrated their 50th anniversary in 1976.
Is Rosie like you, a world traveler, or is she sedentary at home?
Well, at present she's in Israel. She traveled a bit. Not too much because of Yetta, this child, kept her back. The only time she has traveled is to see the different doctors. She went to Connecticut to see somebody who she thought might help Yetta. And wherever she thought she could get help. You see, Rose fell down a flight of steps when she was in the 7th month. And when Yetta was born, the part of mobility was hurt. And this is after many, many doctors' reports that we received. And so Yetta was born January 1940. She's 47 years old. It's a marvelous vocabulary, finds it hard to talk, but she's absolutely immobile. Can't walk at all. It's in a wheelchair. Can't see.
If we were to go back just a minute chronologically, you mentioned your parents. What do you remember of your grandparents or even your great-grandparents? Do you remember?
No, not my great-grandparents. That's too far. They died in...
Who were your mother's parents?
My
then?
father's mother died in childbirth. He left my father when he was 2 years old. And my grandfather was the rabbi of the town, and the rabbi must have, and there were 5 children, and he must have someone to take care of the children. So this grandmother, the second grandmother, raised my father to such a degree that he never forgot her. And Ethel was named for her. She cherished his every move, and there was such a bond between them, in spite of the fact that she was the second mother.
What was your grandfather's name? Your father's name?
Moshe Hirsch.
And his,
Hager.
and his second
Or,
wife? Okay.
the first was Miriam. My Miriam is named for the first grandmother, and Ethel's named for the second grandmother. And so he always kept both yard sides. Now let me tell you about your grandmother on your father's side, your Father Gottesman.
Meaning your mother?
My mother-in-law.
Okay.
That's your grandfather's mother.
Okay.
She was a midwife. She got her schooling at the Columbia University. It was only a college then, it wasn't a university. And she was Brooklyn's most renowned midwife. All the doctors who wanted a case to be well taken care of, they recommended Sarah Gottesman.
This was Michael Gottesman's mother.
She was a cultured woman, spoke a beautiful German, was soft-spoken, and a very, very clever woman. Your grandfather was troubled with his feet, and he was incapacitated because of his pain in his legs.
This was her husband.
Her husband,
What was his
your
name?
great-grandfather,
What was his name?
Louis. He was a very handsome man. He was known for his beauty as a man. He was very charitable, but he never worked. He took care of the family and he was home. He was sedentary most of the time.
Were they born in this country or were they also
No,
born in
your grandfather was raised in Romania, Louis.
Louis was raised
And
by
this
her
was
grandmother.
the second marriage for both.
Okay. When did
And
they come to this country, do you know?
your grandfather was 11 months old when your grandmother came to this country. And he was a nursing baby too. Michael Gottesman, your grandfather.
How did you meet your husband, Michael Gottesman?
September 2nd, 1916. The doorbell rang and in came Michael Gottesman,
How old were you
who
then?
knew my father. And the first question Papa asked him, Michael had been very orthodox. In fact, to such a degree, he was very fanatic. So Papa asked him, Michael, are you still so fanatic? He said, no. He said, then you can come in and meet my daughter. And when he came in that day, I remember the date as it is today. He was supposed to come in and sit for about an hour. 5 hours he spent talking to me on different subjects. The next week he wrote me the most beautiful letter, told me how much he thought of me. And the third week he came with 2 books. They thought Ethics of the Fathers and the Jews and Persecution.
We're going to take a pause for 1 second. All right. So you were telling about your father?
My grandfather, my mother's father, was the first matzah baker in New York.
Where?
On Attorney Street. Does
And what year would this have been?
That would be 1903, 1904. 1904.
Do you remember the name of the company?
It was just his company. He was the matzah baker. He had the company. It was called Aaron Simcha Box Matzahs. He competed with the Harvard's Margaretin people. So that dates back then when they were there. And then he made wine, and so they would bring in a ton of Concord grapes, and they would throw the grapes, come in, and the chute would put it down into a bin. And I would crawl up in on that bin and eat myself sick with grapes. And I recall, these were the Concord grapes. Until I was pulled off, I used to get sick. I ate so many, and that's the only grapes up to today that I love. You couldn't give me any other grapes. Well, it was beautiful to see how the wine was made, and I saw how the matzahs were baked, and I watched. I was always anxious to see. I used to go to my grandmother very often because I was sort of their favorite. And because I was so anxious to see these things, they in turn were happy to have me see these things. And I was never rebuffed for doing anything. I was helped along. And I guess that's how I got to love them more, because they made me feel so important all times. I'm speaking when I was 5, 6, 8 years old. I remember.
This is your mother's parents?
My mother's parents. And up to the time that my grandfather died, my grandfather never had teeth in his mouth because it wouldn't be kosher to eat milk or meat dishes with one set of teeth. So he refrained from having any teeth. He died when he was 73 years old. He was the most handsome gent you wanted to see. And
what did he do? Matzahs and wine for his whole life, or what did he do?
no, then he retired. And he was more of an agent for a Philadelphia matzah baking company, the Friedman Company they were called. These matzahs came from Philadelphia, and they opened up stores here. And my grandfather was the one to go to these different stores to see how they were doing. Then for Sukkot, he used to work with the esrog. You know what that is?
Yeah.
And that I remember very nicely. They used to have the esrog, that was imported from Israel and Greece. And we tried, I wrote for my grandfather to the government, agriculture department, we should plant the esrogim here. Yes, here. But our, doesn't lend itself, our climate. But in Greece, the climate is good. And my grandfather, I remember that. I was very young. I have to go back to that time. Oh, I don't think I was more than 6 years old. I remember my grandfather went to Greece. But he was on the ship, and there were a bunch of pirates came up on the ship. And he, as I said, he was very handsome. And he spoke German, he spoke Romanian, and of course Yiddish. He didn't know English at the time, but then later on he had a smattering of English. But he always referred to his speech as German. But when he was on this pirate, when these pirates came up, they were ready to kill him, to take the money from the people who were on. There were a few people on going to Greece to buy the esrog. Somehow or other he found the strength of their eyes. They liked him, and they let him go. But he had a picture of the pirate clothes.
It was like your money or your money or your esrog. Is that what that was?
They wanted the money. That I remember. That was an incident that used to stand out. My grandfather.
Who was the big Zionist in the family?
The Zionist. My father was a Zionist. I remember years back, every time there was a shul, they brought a Torah into a shul. They didn't simply walk with the Torah through the streets, but they had a band. And the band would just play, and people would congregate along with the band, and you'd have a whole throng following the Torah, so the Torah wouldn't be alone. It was just one or two people. And they used to collect money to help to pay for the Torah. So that's what they called that, a Sima Sefer. A seam, they made a seam, I mean, clothes, a sefer. Then they used to play the Hatikva on the street. And that was the only song they played. And that's how Zionism became known to the youth who enjoyed hearing about there was such a place as Palestine. I know that my grandfather used to tell how he helped his grandparents get ready to go to Palestine. And they bought a house in Tveria. And that house is still there, but when they died, they said they want that house for a poor family. And whoever dies that in turn should go to another poor family. They didn't want any revenue from that house. And it's still there somewhere in Siberia.
This was Hager's?
No, Bach. My
Bach.
grandfather.
I mean, there's Bach family. How did there come to be Hager family in Israel?
Hager is many during the war. Many came from Austria. The ones in Israel are Austrians.
Which
came
war?
from Austria. The Second World War, darling.
They came before?
Some came during 17, the First World War. Many came during the Second World War, when it was when Hitler came in 33, the Anschluss, that was in Vienna when he started. That was quite a period, and many of them fled.
Did you belong to any Zionist youth movement?
Yes, well, let me tell you. I had the pleasure, when I was 15 years old, to join the Austro-Hungarian Zionists. It was a beautiful group of people. And I said what I told you, that I met the Elites, the real dignitaries that I met at the time. And I was very proud that I was part of it. We went out for the first Flag Day. We used to go out with a little flag. In one hand we'd hold the little Jewish flag. It was just a little blue and white. That color was before we had Israel and the American flag to show it was dual. And we'd go to try to schnark. Karen Kayanis, give for Karen Kayanis. That was the slogan. And of course,
Karen Kayanis is the Jewish National Fund.
That's what we'd say. Please help Karen Kayanis. Please help Karen Kayanis. So then that's how it started, my father, and then I met Michael, my husband, my late husband, and he was a Zionist. And that's how we impregnated the thought to our children and grandchildren to be Zionists.
Before I ask you about your children, as long as we're talking about Zionism, you mentioned to me that you had met an important Zionist figure during your life.
You know, I knew Tertina's uncle, Tersinai.
Tertina being the president of the Zionist Organization of America.
Tertina was.
How about somebody that was later president of Israel?
Well, I met Dr. Weitzman on our show.
What year was that you met Chaim Weitzman? Do you remember?
I met him at the Astor Hotel when I was pregnant with your father in 22. And then the meeting was, the night of the meeting was, how can we get the Balfour Declaration? He had already given the TNT in exchange for Palestine for the Jews. You know, Weitzman did that. You know that he gave England the TNT, so in exchange we would have a home for the Jewish people. But Balfour, Crook, wherever he is, he felt that it wasn't time yet. So we went through a terrible period. There were meetings galore. Every month there was another fundraising. And we had dinners. We weren't wealthy. But your grandfather was always on the giving side. When I met him, he was in his last year in law school. He was a recipient of a scholarship to Columbia for 4 years. That was before I met him. And when I met him, he was in his senior year at Fordham Law. He got a BA in Columbia, and an LLB he got it at Fordham. And he was sworn in 1917. We were married in 19. Yes, we met September 2nd, 1916, and we were married August 1st, 1917.
Where was your first home together?
320 Hart Street, the same building with my parents. It was a two-family house.
This was still in Manhattan, in the
It
Lower
was
East
still
Side?
on Hart Street. That was Williamsburg. I had the 2 upper floors. Zaid and Baba had the 2 lower floors. There was a parlor floor and basement. The basement consisted of a dining room, a big dining room, and a kitchen, good-sized kitchen. Upstairs were 3 bedrooms. And on top, second floor, I had the kitchen and dining room and living room. And the top floor were my 3 bedrooms. And Zeta Gottesman, after Baba Gottesman died, Zeta Gottesman lived with us for about 2 years. Then he had a prostate. At that time, anybody who went through a prostate operation was sure to die. And 1924, Zeta died. Baba Gottesman died in 21. She died of heart. She had a stroke and she pulled out of her stroke. It was her heart that went bad. She died in 21. I only know her 6 years. She was a lovely woman.
This was the midwife. This was the midwife.
The midwife.
Right. Sarah.
When did you have your first child?
My first daughter, I was married August 1st. You can count now, count. August 1st. I was married August 1st, 1917. Ethel was born June 2nd, 1918. Right. And my second boy was born June 25th, 1920. He died in the 6th year of diphtheria and the coptic spots.
What was his name?
Bummy Abraham. Your brother's name for him, David Abraham. Then my darling son, long may he live, was born October 15, 1922.
What is his name?
Israel. And he's named after Sarah. Israel means prince, and Sarah means princess. So your grandfather, who knew Ruth so well, thought it was a good name. No, my mother's name was Sarah too. So when your father asked my husband, our darling son-in-law, who revered her, Mama, would you mind if we named him Israel? She says, you name him even after me and I'm not afraid. So he was named after Sarah Gottesman. And then in August 19, 1927, Miriam was born. Bummy died February 1926. It was a terrible loss. I was so young. It was, I couldn't take the pain. I'll admit I felt I was selfish. I thought, why did I have to suffer that pain? But it happened. He just, on Zeta's shoulder, he choked. He just choked. I've seen life ebbing, but that was the first time, and it still lingers in my mind, how he had his head on his father's shoulder, threw his head back, and that was the end. And the doctor was in the house, family doctor was there. I told you he had an anaphylaxis, it was maybe too much. And Bob, do you live with it, and you suffer, and it's like a sore. There's a scab over it, but so you think of it. Then Miriam was born, August 19. She came as to close our wounds. August 19, 1927. That's the one of linguists who's
She lives in Santa Cruz, California
Santa
now.
Cruz.
And who was your youngest?
And then Barry was born April 9th, 1933.
That's Barry Siegelstein.
That's Barry.
That's from Mary.
That was her son who just called. He said he came from Israel.
Were you delivered at home or in the hospital?
This is funny. I didn't want to go to a hospital because they had exchanged children in the nurseries. And this is a fact. There were several that she thought she had a child with this, but they gave her somebody else. So I didn't want to lose my child. So I gave birth. I had a female doctor. So I gave birth with Ethel and Bobby home. Suki, I went to that Moses Hospital, beautiful doctor's hospital in Williamsburg. And the rest, I had this Dr. Armstrong for Miriam and for Barry.
Did you go to sleep for your deliveries, or were you awake?
With Miriam, I read Huxley's Life while I was delivering.
That's why she's the intellectual one in the family.
Well, the doctors came in. How could she read? How could she read now? I read.
Who did the
Memories are so sweet if we have memories. Some are so pleasant. But memories enrich us.
When did you move to Brooklyn?
Oh, Brooklyn, we moved in 1907. From the east side, we moved to Brooklyn. I remember I started school in Brooklyn in 1907. Graduated from there and went to Eastern District in Williamsburg.
So when you lived
never graduated from high school. My mother didn't want me to go to school too long. She wanted me to be home, help her in the house. And the education that I had was on my own. The little that I had.
You have more than a little. This
I
is for
struggled
posterity, no false modesty here. So when you
I
moved
struggled.
when you moved in with your parents in Hart Street, then that was in Brooklyn?
It was in Brooklyn,
In Brooklyn.
darling. And then we moved in 1925. We moved to another section where we lived only 1 year. And then we bought the house. We bought a house.
Where was the house?
The house was East 37th Street,
You remember the address?
206 East 37th Street, and Miriam was born there. So you might remember the house. And from there we moved to Avenue H, and then to 1362, that you remember, Ocean Avenue,
Did you lose a house during the Depression?
during the Depression. You see, the law profession was absolutely different. The lawyers would kill each other they'd go through the yards. Any cases? Zeta wouldn't do that. His pride was too strong. He didn't do that. he would write a brief every now and then, and he would make some money. He was a very good brief writer. You know what a brief is, you're a lawyer. And then he would help someone in the law. He would look up the law. In fact, he also made law. Once in the review, his name went down to posterity. It was the landlord and tenant law that he made. It's like Gottesman law. He died, and I lost a very dear friend, and a companion, and a teacher.
What year did he die? What year did he die?
He died May 10th, 1958, after 41 years of marriage. He lived to see Judy, David, Bruce, David Abraham, Mark Jesse. These were all the grandchildren that he had.
Deborah Lane. Deborah Lane.
And Deborah Lynn.
And Jonathan.
Jonathan and Vicky. But they were in California already. You didn't see them. That's that.
Before we go on to the grandchildren, tell me, where did you send your children for schooling?
Your father, well, Ethel went to Madison, to high school there. She belonged to Aristotle. She was related to Aristotle. She was a very good student. Then she went to Brooklyn College. Miriam got the gold medal from Midwood High. You know, she was in class with Woody Allen, I told you.
What did she get the gold medal in?
French. She was the outstanding in French. And Spanish as well, but French, she got the French medal. And during the war, she went to the École Libre, the Free French, had a school. But they taught the French students who wanted to. And Charles Boyer gave money for it. And then there was a levy. He was a French Jew who ran this school. It was on Fifth Avenue, where the school is now. It's the Fifth Avenue, 12th Street. And she was there till after the war, when they gave that up.
What about the other
There's
children?
so
Where did they go
many-
to school?
What did?
What about the other children? Where did they go
Look
to
who's
school?
up.
I don't know why he's not.
Okay. Where did your son Suki go to school?
Suki started the yeshiva and he was 10 years old.
Which yeshiva was this?
Yeshiva of Flatbush. I tried a few yeshivas and they wouldn't take him because he was too old. At 10 years he was too old. But when I called up Bob Robberman about the yeshiva, so he said, come down and see it, we won't talk over the phone. So I came in, it was Halamot, Sukkah. And I walked into the gym and he saw the children around. And he was so shy, and he sat on one chair with me. And he turns to me and he said, I'd like to go here. So I walked over to Bob Robin and I said, is it possible for my son to be registered here? He looked at him and he said, yes. And Mrs. Problem at St. Mary took him under her wing, and in 3 years got the highest, graduated from the elementary.
Was that the first graduating class?
He was the first Hebrew graduating, the second English, but the first Hebrew. And then he went for a year to the Teachers College at the Yeshiva University.
Vernon Michael Teachers College?
Yeah, Levesa Medrash Lamori. But he couldn't travel on the train. He would get sick on the train. he had to walk practically a mile to get on the train. So we decided he had to stop. So he went to Madison, and he got the scholarship to Cornell, 4-year scholarship. But Zeta was sick. And he said he wasn't going to leave me with Zeta sick. He wasn't going to go to Cornell. It hurt me. Times were very bad. It was during the Depression. So he went to Cooper Union for chemical engineering. Couldn't draw a straight line. He still can't. So every day they came in from the different, from the Air Force and the Navy and the Army, trying to recruit the men.
This is during World War II, the early days?
World War II. So Ethel was working for the warshipping department, and that entailed the at Kings Point. So Ethel said to ask her commander, would he consider taking her brother? Oh yes, he thought he would enlist with the Marines. Came home and said he was going to enlist with the Marines. I didn't like the idea, but it was during the war. Everybody, if he wasn't going to enlist, they would draft him, and they would put him wherever he would want to go. So Ethel pulled wires, and this Captain Anderson said for him to come to the academy. And in the academy, he got his BS.
The Merchant Marine Academy.
He sailed. You know, he used to sail and study while he was at sea. Then he'd come back to the academy for 3 weeks or so. Then they'd sail again. It was the Merchant Marine Academy, but it was under the Navy's auspices of the Navy. We got the degree from them. And then when he, in 1946, he met a very lovely girl. And 3 months later, they were married. And about a year and a half later, David was born. And a little while later, a few years later, Mark was born. So that was the ending from that.
What was it like having a son at sea during the war?
I hate to tell you this. The newspapers were sure to enlarge the print and tell us how many ships went under. One day, just thinking about something happening, Daddy brought up a newspaper and it said, 2 ships, Germany sunk 2 American ships in the Solomon Islands. And I thought he was in the Solomon Islands. I knew he was going out towards that way. And I was so heartbroken, and I was walking along thinking, my God, if there is a God, please save him. I swear to God, he just came across to me. He had his duffel bag on his back, and he carried the rug down my floor.
He was coming home on leave.
Came home on leave.
You didn't know that he was
He didn't know that he was allowed out. So you see, you go through so much. I didn't believe it. He said, you know, I was like in a daze, and he said, Mama, don't you recognize me?
Did you even know if he was in the Atlantic or the Pacific during the war?
That's what it is. You never know. And I used to tell him, be sure to put on your pajamas. So he laughed. But he says, when the bells ring.
Was he a good son? Did he ride home?
Everything was censored down. He was always a good son. Always a good son. I have no kid coming. I have good children. When Zeta died in '58, it was a terrible loss for me. Because Zeta acted more of a teacher to me and a companion. I was left, there was a big void. But I was fortunate, Baba, my mother, came and said she would stay with me, and she was not going to leave me alone because I'm a coward. And I really welcomed her because she was very intelligent, and I had someone I could talk to who would understand, and I didn't have to go into detail for her to understand. So,
She had lived with Rosie up until that point.
you know, she had her own apartment
Right.
downstairs.
Right.
She had the lower apartment downstairs. Well, we built that for her. We paid for it. So the builder would build that for her. But the mom lived with me from 58 to 69. She came May 10th, the night that Daddy Zeta died, the night of the funeral. She came and she left me August 13th, 1969.
How old was she when she passed away?
In her 99th year, had all her faculties.
Who was that?
All her faculties, my mother. And she said to me, she had pain during the night. She had terrible pain in her arms, so I called our doctor. Had a very friendly doctor. Not only was he a good doctor, but he was a friend. He loved mother. I told you she was very intelligent to the last minute. So he came, I called him. And he came up, he gave her an injection. Her arm swelled up. And pain was excruciating, but after he gave her the injection, she felt better. So she sat up in bed, and she said to me, listen, I don't want you to be afraid. Don't be a coward. I hope you have lots of nothings in your children. But don't be a coward. I said to her, Mama, are you going on a trip? She says, I'm almost 100. How long do you want me to be here? So I ran to the phone and called Rose, called my sister to California. Meanwhile, my brother was en route. Harry came. I didn't know that he was coming, so he came. But it was hard. Rose came after she passed away. She came back then. His mother had passed away. It was sad for me to see her go. I felt there was a void. I was going to have that void. I think of her really loving me because we had a very lovely rapport always. So that's one period of my life.
Take the generations going the other way. Tell me about your children and who they married and their children one at a time.
Ethel married Leo, who had been a widower.
Leo Reutemann.
Leo Reutemann. His wife died in childbirth, and Judy was born. That's my oldest granddaughter. Then in 1946 they were married. Mom and Dad were married 3 months before her. They were married in June.
Israel married Ruth Gottesman.
Ruth Gottesman.
So he got married before your oldest daughter did.
Before my oldest daughter. She married 3 months later in October. Miriam was married in Marseille. She went as a chaloutz to Marseille, and she was en route to go to Sasa, to one of the kibbutz in Sasa.
Which Zionist movement did she belong to?
Hashem HaTzayir, the left, all the way left.
Is that okay, even though they were non-religious youth?
Didn't mean a thing to me. Israel was being built.
So she went with your blessing?
Well, I missed her, but when she was in Hakshara, in Heightstown, I was visited with her for a week. I spent a whole week with them, and I stayed in the tent. I was one of the kibbutzim there. You know what Hakshara means?
Preparation.
Preparation.
Hashem Seer, they still had the Hakshara at Heightstown until probably the late 60s.
And I met the most intelligent young men and women. It was a pleasure being with them. I didn't think of religion.
Zeta felt the same way. It was okay that his daughter was going.
Yes. He said he thought she was going for an ideal. It was an ideal with her.
How'd she get detained in Marseille? What kept her there?
Because of her language. Because of the language they brought. She was there when the Moroccans came in on the magic carpet. They were brought to, where was she? She was in Bari, Italy. The joint built tents for them there. They were indoctrinated there until they went on coal ships and back to Israel before they landed in Cyprus.
These were primarily children?
Men, women, and children.
What year was this that they were going on the exodus from Morocco to Israel?
1950. She left in the latter part of 1949, and it was about early 50. And there she met Yitz, and they were engaged there, and a Moroccan rabbi officiated.
Was this in Italy or France that they got married?
It was she was married in Marseille. Then an English woman gave her villa to the joint, so they were able to bring these people. And Yitz came. He was with the RAF, and he was mustered out on a vacation, on a holiday, if you please. So he came as a volunteer to build tents for the Moroccans, for the newcomers. They tried to teach them. They had they were hygienic. They knew nothing about hygiene, and they lived such primitive lives. And when she went up to the joint, she said she and a friend of hers, her friend is dead. She said, we want to go to Sasa. Everything's in Sasa. I sent quite a trousseau up to Sasa. So they said, you must give us time. We'll send you. We'll send you illegally. We'll send you. They send these people illegally. So they said, but we need you now because of your language. And they all speak French, the Moroccans. And so she was there until she became pregnant with Deborah Lynn. And she wrote that she was pregnant. So I said, I want this child born in America. Food was not too plenty. And she came, she looked shrunken, she was all shrunken. And she had this big belly and she looked like an old woman. When I took her to Dr. Armstrong, he was really frightened when he looked at her. She looked emaciated. Deborah Lynn was born September 1950. September, Labor Day, 1950. That was Marion. The Gitz. He was an Englishman. You know, they came from Manchester. He came from strict Orthodox people. They weren't learned people, but they were fanatics. They thought that that was the way to be. And they used to tie him up in shul on the Shabbos. So he would stay in shul. That's right. And he rebelled. And he became an outright atheist. Not an atheist, an agnostic. An atheist thinks maybe there is a God that I don't believe in. But he became an agnostic. So that's Miriam. Barry married Morris.
Siegelstein.
Morris Siegelstein, who was a product of Auschwitz. He was 13 years old when he went to Auschwitz.
Do you know how Morris came to this
And
country?
yes, and Governor Lehman at the time was the one who instituted bringing children to the States.
Is Herbert Lehman?
Governor Lehman, it was through him. So the highest, it was through Governor Lehman that gave highest, they gave the highest a grant
Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society.
to bring these children to America. And he came to his Aunt Sarah and his uncle. He had two uncles here. His mother's brothers. His mother and father and two brothers were done away with by Hitler. So these are, Morris is a very fine, energetic young man.
And who are the children that he and Barry have?
Michael, who's the Israeli, who pretends he's from Israel, and Karen, who has two children. Michael is not married.
Yes.
Not yet.
What is Karen's married name?
Her name is Karen Gottesman. Her husband is Jay.
And their children?
Very fine. Two lovely children, Eliyahu, and Ezra. Two lovely children. Judy has Benjamin.
Judy is Ethel Reuteman's daughter.
Ethel Reuteman's daughter has Benjamin. David Bruce has Jonathan.
What are their spouses' names? Judy married.
Staley.
What's her married name now?
She calls herself Reutemann.
Okay.
And David Reutemann, Susan.
And their baby's name?
Jonathan.
Okay.
And Miriam Deberlin has Colin and Michael. Her husband's Nicky. And Barry is, I told you, Michael and Karen has the two children.
Right, remember, you mentioned Miriam, or Mitchie as we call her. Her
Mitchie.
daughter Deborah is married. What about her daughter Vicky?
Vicky is unmarried.
And her son
She's
Jonathan?
a bus driver.
Okay.
And Jonathan is a oceanographer. And now he was invited into the unique, largest lab and to do research with. He was there invited for a 2-year contract. And his time is up in June.
How many great-grandchildren do you have?
9 grandchildren and 9 great-grandchildren.
We've covered.
All my great-grandchildren, 8 are boys, and I have 1 girl.
Who's that?
And my oldest great-grandson is the nicest boy one wants to meet. Daniel, what?
Jonathan.
Daniel Jonathan Gottesman.
Who are his parents?
His parents are Dr. Mark Gottesman and Debbie Daly Gottesman. And
Israel is their grandfather.
And Israel is the grandfather, and Ruth is the grandmother.
Daniel has 1 brother and 1 sister. And who are they?
Rachel Dory, who's a very sweet little blonde girl with angelic looking hair. All over.
One more. A minute or two. Keep going with the family. You're missing one.
And of course, Jonathan.
Joshua.
It's my kid, Jonathan.
Joshua, your godson.
That's right.
Very bright little youngster.
And his Hebrew name?
Miss Yeshua.
And his middle Hebrew name?
Yochanan.
Menachem. Named after?
My husband.
My name is Sandra Gottesman. I am 8 years old.
My name is Mark Gottesman, and I'm 34 years old.
I'm Israel Gottesman, and I'm 64 years old.
And these are my 4 generations. But I'm very proud of Francis Gottesman. And I'm 91 years old.
Till 120.
Right.
200 birds a day. Tens of thousands of albatross would be clubbed to death on Midway, too, but for very different reasons. The U.S. Navy, which manages the island, was not in the feather business, but it was in the business of protecting aircraft. And during the war, and for 20 years after, Midway's airstrips were incredibly busy. Meanwhile, the Goonie bird population was exploding, passing the 100,000 mark by the early 60s. In one nesting year alone, nearly 1 plane in 10 collided with Goonie birds. Now, no human lives were lost, but the potential was always there. Today, Midway's importance is faded, like the sound of the battle that bears its name. And the Goonies have all but inherited a world that humans built out there in the great new wilderness.
And the prize is victory.
Arthur Bomber Harris on A&E's Biography, tonight at 8, 9 Pacific.
This is what American Airlines does better than anyone else. Arrive on time. Again and again. In fact, American has had the best on-time arrival record of the 7 largest domestic airlines for as long as records have been kept. American Airlines, the on-time machine.
Wait a minute. You're telling me Total Raisin Bran has 4 times the vitamin nutrition of my Raisin Bran?
That's right, 4 times.
It tastes just as good.
Actually better.
And the question is, can I think of a reason why I shouldn't buy Total Raisin Bran?
Correct.